I've lived in 39 of the 50 states, and one decision almost kept me in the wrong place for good. After traveling across the country as a Broadway performer, yes, in a past life a long time ago, that's what I did, that's what I went to school for, I'd seen just about every kind of city you can imagine. My wife and I packed up everything we owned, which really wasn't that much, and moved from New York City to Winston-Salem, North Carolina. And that was the spot that gave us the balance we couldn't find anywhere else. Growing up in Northeast Ohio, November meant the sun pretty much disappeared until Easter. We used to joke, Halloween to Easter, we said goodbye to the sun. That was normal back then, and it's a big reason I started treating every Broadway tour like research for where I might want to live one day. Some people spend their lives in one or two places. I got a front row seat to truly 39 states, and every stop helped me figure out what worked, what didn't, and what I wasn't willing to deal with for the long term. There's a running joke where I grew up. Ohioans are everywhere except Ohio. Once you spend enough winters under those lake effect clouds, you realize the rest of the country doesn't go gray for half the year. And you start thinking about where you might want to live. Then touring showed me a different version of the same problem out west. I spent time in Olympia, Washington, and the Pacific Northwest, and it brought constant rain and gray skies. It reminded me of touring through England. Beautiful, no question, but after a while, that weather starts to weigh on you. And the place we eventually found gave us the seasons I'd been looking for all along. I'll get into that in a few minutes. Now, by the time I started thinking about seriously where to settle down, I had a short list that wasn't changing. I wanted 4 real seasons, a real spring, a real fall, and not a winter ending on Friday and summer showing up on a Saturday. That list stayed with me for years, long before North Carolina ever came into the picture. And that brings me to the next part, because leaving Broadway and starting a family made this decision much harder and frankly more important. Before we get there, if Winston-Salem is one of the places on your list, or frankly anywhere in North Carolina, I work with people relocating here every day. I help them compare neighborhoods and understand the trade-offs and figure out which area might fit them best. Okay, enough selling, back to the video. This is the part at which staying in New York stopped making sense for our future family. The Broadway dream versus raising a family. I love New York City more than almost anywhere I've ever lived, but one number made it clear that staying there wasn't going to work for the life we wanted next. My acting career eventually brought me to New York to chase the Broadway dream. And I want to be clear about this. If you're young and single and building a career in the arts, it's really kind of impossible to beat. That energy is just on another level. But at some point, your career goals start sharing space with your family goals. And that's what happened with my wife and me. Once we started talking about kids, the numbers stopped working. See, living in New York City costs roughly 164% more overall than living in a place like Winston-Salem. And that's not a small difference. Frankly, it can be a lot larger, depends on where you live in New York City and Winston. And hang tight, because what happened to our money after we moved still surprises the families I talk to on a daily. I'll be back to that in a moment. Now, the cost wasn't the only issue. Raising kids in a dense city means less space, harder routines, and more effort just getting through a normal day. New York, it gives you this energy, access, and opportunity. Ease, well, that's gonna be harder to find. The financial gap was enough to make us stop and think. Once we added in the kind of childhood that we wanted for our family that we hadn't started yet, staying in New York, it no longer made sense for us. We didn't spend years searching for the next place. We already had one specifically in mind. Choosing North Carolina in the 4 seasons now out of the 39 states, it only took one visit for me to know. I met my wife when I was 22, way younger than I ever envisioned, and she grew up in North Carolina. Frankly, she grew up all over the East Coast, but went to high school and college at University School of the Arts here in Winston. Early in our relationship, I came to visit her hometown for the first time, and I still remember flying into Greensboro's airport that September and looking out the window. Everything was so green. Trees everywhere, rolling hills, and after years of touring through places that felt flat or gray or built up, this area just stood out right away. Winston-Salem and the Piedmont have the landscape that just feels alive. Mature trees, gentle hills, and so much lush green, especially in late summer and early fall. By the time we landed back in New York, I already knew that her hometown wasn't just somewhere I liked visiting, it was where we were going to end up one day. But North Carolina checked every box I had. You get 4 real seasons here. Spring doesn't disappear in a week, and fall hangs around long enough to fully enjoy it. October brings some of the best colors you'll see anywhere and phenomenal temperatures. Warm in the afternoon, cool at night. Winter definitely still shows up, but usually it's quite mild and quite short, 4 to 6 weeks. And then there's the sky. People call them Carolina blue skies for a reason. And once you live here, you'll get it. Clear, bright, and showing up far more often than what I grew up with in Ohio or frankly saw anywhere specifically in the Pacific or Pacific Northwest. After years of gray, that felt like a different way to live. And we flew back to New York. The decision was made. We just needed the right reason to go. But falling in love with a place on one visit might be easy. The real test is whether everyday life still holds up years later. So let's fast forward and look at what life here feels like now. 16, actually coming up on 17 years is more than enough time for a decision to prove itself. For us, Winston-Salem has held up better than I expected. The weather is still one of the biggest wins. We get those long springs and falls that I was talking about earlier, and changes how we live every day with more time outside, more evenings on the porch, and more days enjoying where we live instead of staying indoors to escape the weather. Some years, spring or fall feels a little shorter. We'll get a week where the temperature jumps ahead faster than we'd like. And that seems to be happening in more places now, frankly, than just North Carolina. Even with those shifts, this is still the best weather balance I've found anywhere in the country. The cost of living holds up too. Winston-Salem sits around 7 and 9% below the national average overall. Housing comes in even lower, around 22 to 32% below the national average. Compared to New York, that changed what was possible for us. We went from looking at the cost of getting by in the city to owning a home with a yard. Home prices here tend to sit in the high 200s to low 300s depending on the neighborhood, the condition, and frankly, how much work has already been done. And that money can buy you a neighborhood with some character. West End sits right along the edge of downtown with large historic homes. It's our little San Francisco. Deep front porches and mature trees. Ardmore gives you that classic bungalow. People love walking their dogs and neighbors talking from across the yard. By the way, unbelievable Halloween. Downtown has changed big time since we moved here too. The old tobacco warehouses are now part of the innovation quarter with biomedical research, offices, walking paths, and green spaces. Bailey Park hosts food trucks and live events and community gatherings all year long. A few blocks away, the Arts District is filled with murals and galleries and local restaurants and small businesses. And then you have old Salem museums and gardens right in the middle of the city. I call it Field Tripville. You can walk along cobblestone streets, tour buildings from the 1700s, and smell fresh baked bread coming from the bakery that's been around since the 1800s. So choosing Winston-Salem feels like the right call, still, for me at least. My old touring life helps me in a way I never expected. When I meet families relocating from other parts of the country, there's a good chance I've spent time near where they're coming from. I understand why leaving home can feel like such a big step. I also know how helpful it is to talk with someone who understands what you're comparing. Over 17 years later, what stands out most is how quickly a hard decision started feeling like the right one. Once we found a place that matched the way we wanted to live, everything started to make more sense. If you're thinking through the same move for you or your family, scan the QR code on the screen and get in touch. I'd love to help you compare Winston-Salem or frankly anywhere in North Carolina. The weather, the budget, lifestyle priorities, all of it. And if Winston-Salem is seriously on your list, there's a $500 million project underway near Wake Forest that could reshape this part of the city for years to come. In the video linked here, I break down what's being built, who's paying for it, and which nearby neighborhoods could see the biggest impact. Thank you very much for watching. I hope to see you on the next one.